I'm Enrique Gonzalez Müller, and welcome to Are You Listening? In this episode, we will be tackling lead vocals and background vocals. How do we make these two giants fit together? Plenty of creative opportunities lay ahead. Remember to check out show notes for tools, episodes, and resources. And here we go.
Fucking suck at guitar.
Vocals. Look at them. There's a lot of them. What are we going to do? Okay, let's listen and try to delineate what are the main vibes we want to go for. Then we're going to talk about what should be a main part, what is a secondary part. And then we are going to talk a little bit about fixing things before we dive in. First off, vibe. We got the verse. What should this feel like?
Took your name off my guitar strap, threw out the non-fat, got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad waves back with you to Fort Wayne.
The thing that I thought was we could make this tense. We just woke up, we're getting out of bed, and it just kind of feels like this. So I'm kind of envisioning more muffled muffled vocals. And we have these as the main, right?
Took your name off my guitar strap.
So maybe that could be distorted and a little bit just muffled. But these vocals instead, right here,
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out.
maybe we can make these a little bit more psychedelic with some modulation. So those are my sonic goals. How about the pre-chorus though?
Try to follow me in my Honda.
So we know that the chorus is coming and that's where everything should really explode. But here we have a little bit of tension just boiling up, right? So I want to make a big contrast when these pre-chorus vocals come in. Maybe we can do a splash of delays or something happening, but we need to have this be a little bit more erratic and more tense.
Try to follow me in my Honda.
Especially with those harmony vocals. But how about the chorus though?
And let me slip into my meditation. Yeah.
So here, the vocal arrangement is helping us a lot. Do this kind of bipolar psychedelic to super heavy because we have these vocals here.
Stop tripping up my good.
That then lead into these chorus vocals, right?
And let me slip into my meditation.
So maybe we can make these first higher vocals really pretty and really wide, and then make the other vocals quite gritty and right in the center. Finally, we have these interlude vocals here.
This protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever wanna see you again.
And I think this is an opportunity for weird. I've never said that ever, but we might get a little weird and interesting here. Perhaps make these vocals just lower and lower the formants or something like that and make them more like Darth Vader-y. That's the vibe I'm envisioning.
This protection for me and my friends.
Yeah, I think that could be good. So now that we got the overall vibe set, let's try to figure out, as we did for the guitars and for the bass and for the drums for that matter, who is main, who is a secondary part. So here with our mix organization, I have made it so that we have this is a main part,
Took your name off my guitar strap.
but this is a secondary part.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
So this just informs how I'm going to aboard this and what I'm going to give more protagonism in both frequency, spatial, dynamic real estate. So this is a main part.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
This is also a main part.
Quit tripping up my good vibration. Yeah, yeah.
So those are the two main parts here. Then what do we have for secondary parts? Of course, we already covered the verse secondary part, which is this.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
Then we have,
Don't try to follow me in my
that's just a double part, but we do have some harmonies here.
follow me in my Honda on the 101. It's time to swallow your kombucha and pride.
And that's a little accent there. So all of those are secondary parts. Here we have some additional harmonies
Meditation.
in the chorus, and we also have
Yeah, yeah.
just little accents here and there. We have also as a secondary part, these guys here in the chorus.
My vibe.
Good vibration.
These low parts that are pretty creepy and awesome. Then we have vibes. And then finally we have these bridge harmonies. Are you ready? That is it for our cast of characters. Quite a bit of stuff, but now we know what the overall vibe is for each section. Who's our main, who's our secondary parts. And before we move on to the details, I just want to say that just like we did for the bass and the guitars, there was also a little bit of fixing that I had to do on these vocals. So if we see here, let's go to the beginning. These are our lead vocals, right? I had to do a little bit of amplitude editing. So this is how they were, and this is how they ended up being after my amplitude editing. As you can see here, some of these were raised by 5 dB, 3.5, 2.5, just to make them more dynamically uniform. Which does, again, two things. It makes things just feel like the vocals are here and I don't have to squint with maybe there's a really low note, brought that forth a little bit. Maybe the singer stepped away from the microphone a little bit. I help that too. I'm not doing automation. I'm just fixing recording issues so that I can have more uniform dynamic presence and I can also be nice to my compressors. Be nice to your compressors. Your compressors will appreciate this. So here we have now a top to bottom amplitude edited track. And now we're ready to mix some vocals. Foundational main vocals. What do we got? Here's our verse.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
Just to get a macro view of everything, we have that lead vocal and we see that there's a double. We also see other doubles that happen in the interlude. You might remember that my whole macro thing with this was I wanted to feel kind of like the vocals just woke up and they're a little bit kind of muffled and dirty, for lack of a better word. And I've decided that I would like to grab these 3 vocals and sum them into an aux where I will treat all of them as one sound. I seldom do this with lead vocals because I typically use auxes to sum things together that at the end of the day end up sounding like one thing, right? I have 2 guitars that I want to put one plugin on, I put out of an aux. I have stacks of 8 vocals that together make up the harmony vocals, I put out of an aux. They're different textures, but still they all share the commonality that I want them all to be a little bit dirty, a little bit muffled. With this in mind, I am then treating these separate vocals to fix any glaring issues. So if we look at the processing that I have for this lead, you see that I have, first off, very mild pitch correction. I'm also then putting a bit of EQ where I'm doing just a little bit of housekeeping. And then I'm putting a de-esser just so that when I have my double and that other double, it doesn't start to overload my S's.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
I use it just moving things slowly into place, not a biggie. Here then I have the EQ. The EQ, our usual suspect of cleaning all of that low rumble that we don't really need. And then I have these two filters. Check them out.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non.
Whoa, dude, what's happening? They are moving. So I'm using this ultra hip feature that Nectar has where you can tell the filter, I am going to put you on a resonant frequency and I want you to follow that little bump as it moves up and down. How hip is this?
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
Genius. And then I have just a little bit of top end sheen and I have this de-esser.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
Let's listen to only what the de-esser is shaving off so you can see how much or little I'm actually applying here. So not a lot. I'm just shaving off a tiny little bit.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
Okay, not the most genius sound ever, but it's devoid of issues. It's devoid of any glaring things that I might need to fix later. Then we have these layered vocals here, right? This is a double. This I'm basically treating as just a parallel process. It's considerably quieter, and I am adding a little bit of pitch correction. The EQ is similar, but I am getting a little bit more heavy-handed with compression. Thinking that this is parallel processing, right? So I want to keep my lead vocals moving dynamically up and down freely, but I'm keeping this copy always at steady state so that if this one ever falls below, this one can represent, and then we always have this solid foundation. So with that in mind, here is the double as it was.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
And now with the processing.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
So you hear how it's a little bit radical, but these two together sound really nice. So I'm going to have you listen to both of them with processing, and then I'm going to play it again, but I'm going to bypass the processing on the second one so you can hear what it's doing.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
It has all of this low end and it kind of moves dynamically too much. I'm going to play it again, leave it in bypass, halfway through, turn it on so you can hear the difference.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
So hopefully you heard how it just clicks into place. Then we have this little accent in the interlude, right?
Give me witness protection for me and my friends.
It's the same performance as.
Give me witness protection for me and.
So I'm thinking, how about if we use this opportunity knowing that the interlude.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never.
Is meant to be the most tense and weirdest part of the track. So what I'm doing here is too many things. I want to carve out something that sounds quite unique. I'm envisioning lower kind of Darth Vader vocal sounds. I want it to be wide so that it just feels like what the heck is happening in this interlude, and then we can snap out of that dream back into the verse. We are adding, as you can see here, a little bit of pitch, a little bit of EQ, quite a bit of compression, right? Similar to that double. Some saturation, a little bit of dimension, but here's where the money is at. The harmony, voices only, and I am bringing things down by an octave.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again. Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
Together.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
And there, I'm exaggerating a bit so you can hear it, but there you have it. Okay, so now we have our 3 components that make up our lead totally ready to go, but now the mixing starts. We want to go for that more muffled, dirty sound. So I started exploring plugins that I didn't know because we got to get out of our comfort zones. And Big Al came into my life. I'm adding some drive, taking out some low end, and I'm boosting the highs by a tiny little bit. Check it out.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad waves back with you to Fort Wayne.
It's getting a little bit crispier, which I really, really like, but it's not dirty enough. So what do you do when you need more dirt? You add dirt by Native Instruments. So here, again, I'm exploring, I'm trying things out, and this is before.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
Here we go.
Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad waves back with you to Fort Wayne.
Things got considerably more forward, and I'm loving the character, but it has a little bit too much low end, and now I need to reshape this into form. So here, our trusty SSL 4000E module, I shaved off a lot of low end at about 107. I'm also shaving some top end at about 10K with this filter, adding a little bit of compression, and check this out. I'm boosting 2K, shaving off some 450, shaving off more low end, adding a little bit of top. This is going to make it a little bit thinner sounding, but this is so that it can fit in the track. So now I'm going to play it for you all in context without this, so that when I pop it in, you hear how it gels into the track.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad waves back with you to Fort Wayne.
It sounds dirty and it doesn't really mask the bass, which was an issue before this SSL thing came in. So this to me is feeling great. The one last thing that I want to do as a little gesture to try to make the vocals just nest into the track a little bit more is, are you ready? We're finally going to put some delay on this track. So as you've seen, and this is just my taste, there hasn't been a lot of reverb. There hasn't been a lot of delay that I've been, sending and doing that. Although in some tracks I have hard put these plugins like, spatial plugins and delay plugins because that's a hard part of the sound. But this is the first time we're sending a track to a delay. So here I have set up a little send with our aux. Right here below, I've created 3 effects. One of them is reverb, the other one is delay slap, the other one is a delay quarter note. So right now we're gonna go look at this delay slap. I am going to hit play and just run through the process of how I think about delays and reverb, and I want you to really think about the concepts that are behind this so that you can apply them to your mixes at home or wherever you mix. So here we have this dry vocal.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
Bone dry, right? All right. So the thing that I'm looking for here is something that almost feels like a little bit of a wider glow to the vocals. I don't want a delay. I don't want this to feel like Elvis has stepped into the house. I want this just to feel like there's a little shimmer that it can just kind of glow around the vocals. So I have selected a slapback delay, which is about a 16th note, 116 milliseconds, right? And every time what I try to do is just sing it. If I don't really know, well, what should I do for a delay? I just try to sing it. So here I do want a little duh, so probably it's going to be so fast, it's going to be a 16th note. But if not, maybe is it a quarter note? Is it an eighth? Sing it. So this is going to be a slapbacky 16th. Then how much repeats do you want? My feedback is at 4%. one repeat pretty much, and it gets out of the way. And then here with my filters, I want this to be a little bit of a glow, right? So I am filtering out a lot of low end so that it doesn't really make my vocals muddier.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
And what I do is just this. Turn it up to 1,000,000.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat.
So that I can hear it, right? So there I can hear it and go,
Took your name off my guitar strap.
oh, it has too much top end. It's not wide enough. And then I go tweak, but I need to hear the thing. Once I do, then I bring this down, I put it in context, and I start bringing it up, thinking, is this something that I should feel or that I should hear? This one is something that I should feel.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your back.
There I'm starting to really hear it, right? So I've gone a little bit too far.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
That, I still can hear it a little bit, but I'm just going to bring it down ever so slightly.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac.
That feels pretty good. So when I heard it, I don't want to hear it. I bring it back and it felt like it was messing with the intelligibility of the vocals. This feels like a nice glow again, which is what I'm going for. So without.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad ways back with you to Fort Wayne.
Guys, we're done with the main lead vocals of the verse, and this is sounding great. So then the next really big hitter here, these chorus vocals.
Quit tripping up my good vibration.
Okay, these vocals, if we go back to what are we doing? What's the direction? These are the prettiest vocals of the entire song. Pristine, clean, wide vocals, which are going to be contrasting with the heavy part that comes later. So I'm putting all of my vocals out of this aux. I'm panning them hard left and right, and I'm deploying the following. Here you see that there's a whole mess of stuff. And because these are important vocals, I'm just going to go and mute every single step so that we can hear it construct as it goes. I'm not adding any pitch correction, but on the EQ, I'm having to shave off a lot of low end and then just make it bright so that they can really pop forward. This I really do in context without EQ. So we see here, of course, we're losing a lot of gain because I'm taking off a lot of energy from that low end. But now, before it just sounded really muffled, now it's sounding like it cuts through, plus it has that kind of angelic sheen that I'm looking for. So before, after, then I have a little bit of de-essing. Then I have this compressor. In this compressor here, we see ratio is 5:3. The attack is letting those initial transients go by at 22 milliseconds. The release is fast, is about 50 milliseconds. So this is just smoothing things into place. And just kind of catching anything that pops up a little too much, just by a little tiny bit. But then I have a second compressor. And this second compressor, now that I have those peaks gently massaged into place, now I'm giving this second compressor a better chance at just keeping things a little bit more uniform without having to go too heavy on it. So 2 stages of compression is doing this for us on this vocal. Then this, of course, is a little bit too loud. I'm going to put this back to a little more where it would have been. After it's all said and done, it's just, I want these vocals to just pop out a little bit more. And every time I feel like I want things to just jump out at me a little bit more, I sometimes go for saturation as a first go-to thing. I'm adding a bit of saturation and look what happens. Before. After. And you hear how things just really pop out, but they don't sound distorted. They just sound kind of excited in a great way. Of course, like everything, here, why retro and not analog? Why not tape? If you go and audition, right? Let's put this on. So we're on retro right now. Let's go and put this on analog. And things are getting a little bit thinner and crisper. Not really what I want. And how about retro? So I just run through until the one that I like the most, that's the way, and then I tweak from there. We've done this before, same concept. And then dimension. This is just meant to add a little bit of sheen, because these vocals are supposed to be pretty. They get this little sheen from this chorusing that I'm adding up top. So again, before. These are sounding like some pretty vocals to me. Now, we need to nest them in. A little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay. Let's talk about this reverb send that I've set up. Similar to what we already did with the delay. I am choosing a reverb and I am thinking, what's the sound? What's the vibe that I want? And I'm cranking it to 1,000,000.
Stop tripping up my good vibrations.
So here I've ended up on more depth because that's what I wound up liking. But how about if we go with add smack?
Stop tripping up my good vibrations.
Too bright.
Stop tripping.
Let's dark and spacious.
Stop tripping up my good vibration.
Too dark and too spacious.
Stop tripping up my good vibration.
This one, the air is way too fresh. How about I can has?
Stop tripping up my good vibration.
This is interesting, but it's not quite the vibe that I'm looking for. So I wound up deciding on more depth.
Stop tripping up my good vibration.
It has that space and vibe that I'm looking for, which is, yes, I do want reverb and I want it to feel like it's a little bit bigger than the vocals even. But
stop tripping up my good vibration.
It's problematic because if I mute it,
stop tripping up my good vibration.
And then I add it,
stop tripping up my good.
I hear that there's a lot of low end buildup that is not going to help my vocals. So then I tweak from there.
Stop tripping up my good vibrations. 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 Stop tripping up my good.
And that sounds really good to me. So I did it in real time for you. What's the vibe again? Get a sound in your head. Sure, go play with presets. And when you go, oh, that's kind of like the sound that I have in my brainium, then go tweak from there. All right. And then I also have a quarter note delay that I'm adding here. Guys, same thought process. I am adding a delay. I've set it to quarter notes.
Stop tripping up my good vibration.
Let's listen to it again. And I've now bypassed the reverb. So we can listen just to the delay. Here I have a sound in my head. It's quarter notes.
Stop tripping up my good vibrations.
That, of course, is what I set up, which sounds lovely to me. And here you see that I have my left and my right. They're a little bit offset, and that creates a little bit more width because it's not the same signal on both sides. I am tweaking the feedback and the low pass and the high pass so that it fits right how I wanted. I'm also here adding a little bit of width, which we have done before. And then I put to taste. Where do I know where to stop? Do you want to feel it or do you want to hear it? Let's check it out. Here it's a little bit like we can feel it mostly, and in those tail ends we can hear a little bit snapping back, and that is enough dreaminess for me. So these are these vocals finally put together.
Rain on me and my vibe. Tripping up my good vibrations. Tripping up my good vibrations.
This sounds great to me. The only thing is, of course, they're quite loud because we were just auditioning stuff. -4 was where I had left them. Check them out.
Rain on me and my vibe. Tripping up my good vibrations. Tripping up my good vibrations.
That sounds awesome to me. Then we have, just as a little compliment to these vocals, these gang vocals here. So you might remember,
Stop tripping on my good vibration.
these creepy vocals that I really like. It's almost like parallel processing. So I have the sheen of those other ones. This is going to be just something that supports the middle a little. You see here that the panning is not as extreme. I initially panned them 50, 51, 51, 51, 51, and then at the aux stage, I collapsed them even more. This is so I can get them out of the way of those other ones. As far as processing, I know that I'm going to have to go quite heavy-handed with this. So the EQ really is the big player. Here you see that I'm shaving off a ton of low end, and this is kind of a copy of the lead vocals, and I just modified from there.
Stop tripping on my good vibrations. Stop tripping on my good vibrations.
So I've made them tiny, and I've put some reverb and some slapback delay.
Stop tripping on my good vibrations.
Because really what they mean to do is just be a little anchor for the other vocals. Let's play these lead vocals without that little anchor, and then we'll pop it in.
Stop tripping up my good vibrations.
Stop tripping on my good vibrations.
Stop tripping up my good vibrations.
Stop tripping on my good vibrations.
That sounds really good. But of course, nobody mixes in solo, at least not when you're making final decisions. So let's go and listen to these in context.
Stop tripping on my good vibrations. Stop tripping on my good vibrations.
Vibe. Tripping up my good vibrations. Vibe.
Tripping on my good vibrations.
So these more centered pan collapsed vocals are giving us more of that kind of more felt than heard center, which is awesome. We're almost there. We have these answer vocals for the chorus, right? We have
And let me slip into my meditation.
So here what we want is character. Those other vocals are angelic and pretty. These are going to be ugly and grrr. So neutron 4, we have an exciter, aka a little bit of distortion. Then we're going to equalize these quite heavy-handedly, it seems, and then a transient shaper. Let's break these down.
And let me slip into my meditation.
So this exciter,
And let me slip into my meditation.
I'm not being shy about this, right? I'm just going there because this is the rock part. So this to me is sounding great, but then this EQ is just meant to make things fit a little bit more. The one mention I want to make is that here we have an obvious bit of house cleaning, right? These first two filters.
And let me slip into my meditation.
But what's up with this little bump at 3? That's weird, right? This I get. This at the top I also get. Let's turn this thing off and see how it sounds without it.
And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation.
So this is adding a little bit of both warmth, but it's also making the vocals feel a little muffled, if you will. And I like that. I want them to just feel like somebody's trying to almost grab this dude's mouth so that he can't speak. This is the vibe that I'm going for, but I'm choosing this frequency sliver, not at random. It's a mix between how it feels and also what bump can I add that is not going to mask other stuff. If you do these little bumps where I want more breathiness or I want a little bit more body, just always be checking to see if, oh, I'm covering the bass. Oh, I'm covering the guitar. And then just tweak accordingly. Maybe you want to revisit the bass and the guitar. Maybe you want to just choose an available sliver frequency like we have here.
And let me slip into my meditation.
Then we have a transient shaper. This is just adding a little bit of attack and taking the sustain down. Because now we're so saturated, it's going to create more dynamic uniformity. This is just adding a little bit of snap on those P's and T's, and all of those breaths, it's just bringing down a little bit.
And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation.
Are you going crazy with this song? I'm starting to get there too. We're about there. So now this transient shaper is really making things pop, and it's also drying things out when they don't need to be all hairy and in your face. Last thing we got, guys, is a vocal synth. Why? Because I want him to be a little weirder. Yes, and I'm putting a little bit of a vocoder, a little bit of a talk box, but the mix is about 40%. So I'm not just slamming it through all the way.
And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation.
Let's do that again, but in solo, because this is taking the level down quite a bit so you can get a little bit more detail. So this is the before.
And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation.
If I give you that times 100 in the mix,
And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation. And let me slip into my meditation.
there, so that I really love. Sounds like, I don't know, it's The Exorcist should be in the room. But I love that little bit of weirdness that it brings, and I'm just sneaking it in like parallel processing. Then a little bit of slapback delay,
And let me slip into my meditation.
a little bit of a quarter note delay,
And let me slip into my meditation.
and then in context,
Rain on me and my vibes.
Tripping on my good vibrations.
And let me slip into my meditation.
Tripping on my good vibrations.
Hit me with
whew, we made it. That is, as they say, a doozy. But it's an important one. Of course, guys, it's lead vocals. Now we have the main parts in place. And when we come back in the next installment of this party we call mixing, we're going to secondary parts.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
Secondary parts. Let's go actually just in order of sequence. The first thing is we got these vocals here.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
Remember, I'm a professor, so I'm going to quiz you. What was the vibe? What were we trying to achieve? I've said this before. I want these vocals to be wider and I want them to flange and really surround the lead vocals with a little bit of a psychedelic vibe. So I'm putting them out of an aux, but each track has just a little bit of housekeeping. And this is a little bit of pitch correction and a de-esser. Very simple. So I'm going to activate these two.
Took your name off my guitar strap. Been through out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
Not a lot, just a little to keep things contained before we go on to the aux. So the first thing is I'm putting a flanger because like I said, I want that thing to surround the lead.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac. Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
It's good, but it's just not good enough. So maybe let's add a second layer of awesome. This plugin that I had never used called Choral Synth. This plugin, check it out.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
On.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
It's something that I haven't quite heard before, and I like that thing that it does, which is like a muffled version of Transformers. If you haven't listened to the Transformers old school animation thing, this reminds me of that theme when they would transfer like that. So I'm really liking this. And then I am really having to kind of mangle frequency-wise the sound that we have because it just adds a lot of low end and doesn't quite fit. So we went from this.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
To this cleanup.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
And you see that I've really tweaked it so it can feel more like a whisper. Now that this is in place, the thing that I want is for these vocals to just not move dynamically. And I'm going to try to do that with some saturation. We've done this before. So we go from this.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
To this.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
Let's put this in context with the lead vocal.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac. Took your name off my guitar strap.
That sounds pretty good. We just need a little bit of delay.
Took your name off my guitar strap.
To nest it in a little.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat, got back on my Prozac.
That's pretty awesome. And now I will bring it down. But you see here that I am going to turn on some automation. And I'm doing this right away and not waiting for later. Why? Because this EQ is really noisy. And I just noted that. But if I crank this a whole mess of a lot, you're going to have to crank it over there as well. If I turn this EQ off, can you hear that? I am putting this at the level that I want it to be, but I'm also, as you can see, just really ducking it to 0 when it's not playing. Then we have this double that happens in the pre-chorus, right? Let's go check it out.
Don't try to follow me in my Honda on the 101.
So here, the thing that I want is to just create a little bit of character. So I'm putting Nectar on and, again, a little bit of pitch correction, de-esser for good measure. I'm adding a little bit of dimension for sheen. I am putting a compressor to keep things in place. And this EQ is just cleaning the low bottom and giving it a little bit of a sheen. Really, I want these vocals to become a bit of a splash. So here is where the arrangement, the production, is really working for us because I want to delineate the pre-chorus with a totally different sound. This layer is going to help me do that. So in solo, this sounded like this.
Don't try to follow me in my Honda R.
And now this is sounding like this.
Don't try to follow me in my Honda on.
This dimension module especially is giving it a little bit of a sheen due to the chorus, which is what I'm looking for. And it's also a bit brighter, which is great. Here is where the big difference in just overall texture happens, is the delay. I'm adding quite a bit of quarter note delay.
Don't try to follow me in my Honda on.
Right? So this is the same delay we had set up before. So my session has a reverb, a delay slap, and a quarter note delay, which is enough for what I need for this specific mix. And here I want this splash to happen with delays that fire to the sides. I am going to play this in context, and I just want you to feel when this pre-chorus comes, you just feel like the vocals just breathe a little and expand to the sides.
Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad ways back with you to Fort Wayne. Don't try to follow me in my Honda on.
And these little double vocals, this is what's causing that underlining difference between the two sections. Then what else do we got? We have some harmonies here. So this harmony, let's go listen in solo.
On the 101.
Punctuating those lyrics, right?
On the 101.
Which is awesome. Here, I am going really heavy with the pitch correction. This is the one big move that I want to make. I was saying that this track is a little reminiscent of some 90s rock, and I want to push it a little harder. These vocals are going to give me a little bit of tuning, little sharpness that we sometimes associate with pop music. I want these vocals to give us that. And then the usual suspects to have it fit.
On the 101. On the 101.
And you hear that dee-dee-dee-dee-dee.
On the 101.
So we have a de-esser, we have a little bit of sheen with a flanger, a compressor keeping things really locked in dynamically, the saturation giving it a little bit of fizz, and this EQ giving it a lot of top. Here, filter number 3, this is again that little sliver of warmth that we can add where available to make these harmonies pop up. So actually, let's do this. I'm going to turn this one off. And let's go play this in context. And I want you to hear how these vocals here, can you hear them or not? Are they salient or not? Or are they salient enough? Check it out.
Try to follow me in my Honda on. It's time.
They're there, but they're kind of back there. This little bump, I trust, is going to make things pop up a little bit more. Check it out.
Try to follow me in my Honda on.
There it is. It just brings them forth ever so slightly, and it is also in this lower mid-range area, which helps with the fundamental of the note, right? So we can hear more of the pitch coming forth. Then a little bit of quarter note delay for good measure.
On the 101.
This is great. Let's just enjoy this one more time, shall we?
Follow me in my Honda on. It's time.
Then we have, I'm excited. Please read my notes. Vocal shout because metal. I don't know if you've been keeping track of the shirts that I have been wearing, but the love for the metal runs deep. And here I'm just going to come clean and show you. What do these vocals do? Let's see what the vocals say.
To swallow your kombucha and pride.
To swallow your kombucha. And this is the name of the song, and it's supposed to be tough, but I don't quite believe the singer. We need more toughness. We need more metal. So I'm putting a big old amp in here. My metalheads out there know what I'm talking about right here. This is a good heavy amp. And there's nothing else that I'm looking for but just a lot of hair. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to pop it in when that word comes up and we are good. So this is how this sounds in context. Yes, it got a little bit more polite in context, but it does feel like there's emphasis and urgency to that word, which is great. Then slap back delay to give it that little bit of a shiny glow. And my vibe. Yes, we're doing all right. Next thing, what do we got? Then we have this chorus harmony. Meditation. We have on the menu Nectar Pro with a slew of stuff. Heavy correction so that it can be similar to the pre-chorus one, right? I want this to feel a little bit more pop. De-esser for good measure. We have dimension for a little bit of sheen. You guys are now starting to anticipate what I'm going to say. Compressor to keep things massaged and not really moving too much dynamically. Saturation so that it can pop out a little bit more. And EQ so that we clean up the low end a little bit and give this a little bit of sheen to pop out of. So we had meditation. And now we have meditation. That little fizz is lovely. A little bit of outer glow with our delay slap. Meditation. And a little bit dreamier vibe with this quarter note delay. Meditation. And in context, this whole adventure sounds like. And let me slip into my meditation. Great. And it doesn't have to just jump out and scream at me. It's just a little bit of an underlining to emphasize the word. Along those tracks, we have this one here. Yeah. Yeah. And this track here is just meant to be a little shadowy ghost. So let's listen in context to see how it fits. So I'm just putting a little bit of slap back delay to give it a little bit of width and we're good to go. What is next? Here we have chorus 3, little bit of ear candy. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Stop tripping on my good. I'd rather see it, but you don't. Stop tripping on my good. It's a little that's supposed to be. I'm imagining you put on your headphones and go, who is there? What's it's meant to be a little confusing. So what I'm doing here is distorting it perhaps a little bit more. So this is it in solo. This is what it used to sound like. And now it's a little hairier, a little brighter. So in context, it now pops a little harder. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Of course, in the middle, I turned it up so that you can hear how hairy it gets. It's just meant to be a little bit of a detail. So now to our last purple tracks down here. They are accents that happen. And this happens right at the top of the chorus, and it is the word vibe. Stop messing with my vibe. So this, what do we want out of this? I am thinking that it's just a splash, right? So I want it to be more delayed, more stereo, and just cleaned up so that it fits. Vibe. And then I'm putting a bit of delay. Vibe. And I'm putting this Sandman Pro because, it does a ton of stuff. But again, I just want it to just feel like it's a bit of a smear of delay. And I like that sheen that it's giving to the track. Then I am making it a little bit wider stereo with this Haas effect thing that I like to do. One side is delayed by 5 milliseconds, the other one by 25, and the result is before, after. It's basically making things wider. And then we're making it fit with a little bit of house cleaning. Right? It's just shaving off the bottom, shaving off the top. Now, it's just a little bit of a splash. Check it out.
Rain on me and my vibe.
Not really jumping out at me, but that's what it's meant to do. If I turn it up a whole mess of a lot,
Rain on me and my vibe.
it's tempting, right? You want the lyric to go vibe, but the thing is that if I do, then the dong dang dang is gonna be really hard to hear. So here we sigh and we let this one go. I'm happy now that it's just adding a little bit of shimmer to the sides. And then we have, oh, I saved the pretty for the end. We have this. So this part, there's so much going on in this section. Check it out. So this to me is meant to be a counterbalancing flavor to all of that nasty, awesome guitar solo. This is supposed to be angelic. So I'm putting in nectar and I am not pitch correcting because there's a whole bunch of notes in there. I am adding a little bit of flanger for sheen, saturation so that it can just pop up a little bit, and EQ for it fitting a little bit better. So here is the before. This is what was given. And this is what I'm doing. Listen to how it sizzles. Listen to how it seems like it has this modulating sheen up top, and then how the low end is just basically shaved off. And then, and in context, this now sounds like this. There, and it has this nice little counterbalancing sheen to the solo. Did we do it? Let's go zoom out all the way. Did we miss anybody? Is everybody here? Oh my God. I'm gonna cry because I think, guys, all of the tracks are in. Wow. Was this easy? No. Was it worth it? Yeah, this is sounding pretty good. But before we call it a day, now that all the pieces are here, let's go take a step back, breathe in, and let's prepare to have some automation. As we covered before when we did guitars and keyboards, I like to do a pass of automation to catch two things. One, dynamic uniformity. Two, add a little bit of drama every once in a while. So we're going to dive in to just underline these concepts right at the interlude. Here you see that I have the lead vocal in stylish yellow. And then we have each particular separate track here. And then we have the aux. The main thing that I like to do, the usual thing that I like to do when I do automation on things that are summed out of an aux is to just go treat the aux, right? Because typically the aux has a bunch of compression that I want to bring up or down the sound of the output of the compressor. If I start turning things in within the tracks that feed the aux, right? I have a compressor at the aux. If I start turning things up or down, it's going to make the compressor typically behave really weird. So I'm going to hit play, and here you see that I do have some automation, but I've turned it off so that we can hear how it was before. So this is 2 bars before the interlude. Pay special attention to the lead vocals and those low, gritty, Darth Vader-y vocals that are layered in there.
Witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
So what do we hear? We have this giant gong of the drums, and they're so loud and awesome and punchy that they are submerging the vocals altogether. So those are going to need a little bit of love. And then when those darker vocals come in, sometimes I can hear some words, sometimes I cannot. It might be processing is making some words catch, some other ones not. Who knows? I can't quite make out all of them. I'm going to play it for you without one more time and look to where these automation bumps are and hear how it's at those spots that I'm having to squint to hear what's going on.
Witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
Now let's go turn on the automation that I have created, and I want you now to hear how this just becomes dynamically more uniform and clear.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
Way better. Quickly, here's the before one more time.
Protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
And then the after.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, 'cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
Way better. This is echoed all over this mix. So let me do this. Let's zoom out so that you can get a little read, an idea of what the automation looks like across the vocals. So these are all of our vocals, right? Look at all of that little minutia automation. You see how I'm carving out syllables and words, and this is just so that it feels uniform. You guys get it. We've done this with the guitars. You can just envision it. I do want, though, to point out to one very last thing, which is a little bit more creative. I had mentioned my love for metal, and we have these wonderful vocals here. And you hear this thing that I've done, which is pop in the word kombucha. If I turn my automation off, to swallow your just ends up sounding kombucha, which masks the lead and it takes away from that kombucha punch. So this is without.
It's time to swallow your kombucha and cry while you.
And this is with.
It's time to swallow your kombucha and cry while you always gotta.
A lot clearer. Believe it or not, this is our entire work on vocals. Let me just zoom out so we can bask in the awesomeness that we've done. It's a whole mess of a lot, but there, we made it. We still have to put some finishing touches on the entire mix after we take a little bit of a refresher, but we are doing great. Keep all of these concepts in mind, try them out, and I'll see you for the finishing touch. Oh no, you're not off that easy. Let's go listen to this entire thing if you still have the energy for it, to see how we're sounding just as a piece of music. Remember? Here we go.
Fucking suck a guitar.
Took your name off my guitar strap and threw out your non-fat. Got back on my Prozac. Covered my bedroom in white sage to send all your bad waves back with you to Fort Wayne. Don't try to follow me in my Honda on the 101. It's time to swallow your kombucha and cry. Yeah, why you always gotta rain on me and my vibes. And let me slip into my meditation. Yeah. my friends, cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again. I got my Japanese dry snacks, Lucy and my wolf pack, a folder of new tracks. And like the bird on your elbow, I'm flexing my free flow, Tika de libido. Don't try to wait for me outside of my show. Just say hello. It's time to swallow your kombucha and cry. Yeah, why you always gotta rain on me and my vibe? And let me slip into my meditation. Life with no parole and no visitation.
Stop tripping on my good vibration. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Stop tripping on my good vibration. Good vibration. Good, 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 good. Stop tripping on my good vibration.
And let me slip into my meditation.
Tripping on my good vibration. Tripping on my good vibration.
Life with no parole and no visitation.
Tripping on my good vibration.
Give me witness protection for me and my friends, cause I never, ever, ever wanna see you again.
Even though we're not quite there, now might be a good time to do this little trick. Just go like that and go. Good job, dude. Good job. This is feeling pretty good. It's feeling like music. I'll see you guys on the last little bit, which is really getting creative with some of this stuff. See you there.